This program is brought to you by the following proud sponsors: Paulson Manufacturing, saving the eyes and lives of workers and first responders by manufacturing the highest quality and most reliable safety protective gear in the world. And by the Alltech Media Group, the region's leading multimedia video production and marketing company, creating powerful and innovative marketing strategies that deliver exponential returns.
Welcome to Manufacturer's Corner. I'm Jeff Allen. More and more American companies are making the switch to the USA for a variety of reasons. Manufacturing jobs once lost overseas to cheaper Chinese labor are being brought home from China, but the process of reshoring, some call it onshoring or bringing back those jobs, is not always easy. So we wanted to find out more about what one organization in particular is doing to help U.S.-based manufacturers bring their manufacturing operations back to our country, and specifically to California. Rosemary Coates is the Executive Director of the Reshoring Institute at the University of San Diego. She's joined us before here on Manufacturer's Corner, and we're glad to have her back. Rosemary, it's nice to have you back on a program.
Thank you.
Tell us about your kind of experience with China, because today we really want to focus on those companies that have their manufacturing operations there and have had in some cases for many, many years and now want to bring those back. You've written a book about sourcing and manufacturing there, but now you want to bring the jobs back. Tell us about that.
Yes, so I spent 15 or 20 years helping many of my global supply chain clients source and manufacture, set up manufacturing in China, expand their production facilities there, implement systems in China and so forth. And that was the thing to do in the 2000s, and when many companies were considering the cost differential. But as we all know, what we left in the wake of doing that were thousands of lost jobs, whole cities that were shut down because a plant would leave, and it was really pretty desolate in terms of putting a giant hole in the middle class in America. And so a few years ago, actually, at the 2012 presidential elections, both Mitt Romney and Barack Obama were talking about the Chinese and really addressing issues with respect to offshoring. And it started a lot of people thinking, and particularly manufacturing executives, about what was happening. And so we started feeling there was a trend in companies evaluating their global manufacturing strategies, and it became more and more apparent to the point where McKinsey did a study about 2 years ago, and again last year they renewed it, and more than half of U.S. manufacturers over $1 billion in revenue are now reshoring or considering reshoring. So there's an evolution going on where executives and boards of directors are really considering the next step, and that is, where in the world should we manufacture? What should we leave in China to develop the China market or to take advantage of low-cost labor in other markets? And what do we bring back to the U.S.? Which is great. We're all for that. We help a lot of companies do those evaluations. But leaving China isn't that easy. And so because we have the experience in China, we really wanted to highlight what the potholes are and the difficulties are with respect to leaving China.
So let's talk about that. How are you able to help companies bring those jobs back? How are you working with them right now?
Well, the first thing we do is a total cost of ownership study. So we would compare the prices, the total cost of all the component parts, including manufacturing, all of the travel, all of the quality issues, all of the things that would go into evaluating the total cost. It may also include automation and certain approaches to advanced manufacturing. So we put together a cost comparison, and in general, when we do that, when we look at automating products and products for the local for the US market particularly, we can generally get the cost within 10 or 15%. And statistics say, so Walmart is a great example, they do a lot of studies about whether consumers will buy or pay extra for American-made products. And the studies say that Americans will pay 10 to 12% more for a product that says made in the USA. So if we know that if we can get the manufacturing costs within that range, 10 to 12%, that it's a favorable decision to actually bring manufacturing back.
So let's talk about the total cost of ownership report or study that you do. I mean, why is it important to consider those costs of leaving an economy where you actually have your manufacturing base set up?
Yeah, so that's one of the key issues, and it's an issue that a lot of consultants miss totally because they don't have the background in China. But there are a lot of problems in leaving China. So let me give you an example. There was an executive named Chip Starnes who had a medical products manufacturing site in China, and he decided to move his production to India because it was less expensive. So he was chasing a low-cost labor market, and so he was going to shut down his plant. The employees in the plant captured him. They didn't hurt him, but they captured him and locked him in his office for 2 weeks and wouldn't let him go. And that's because they wanted a payout of their labor contracts. They wanted a more of a natural approach to tapering down the production and so forth. So he was held captive during this period of time. Another example is Redmond Industries. They make ride-on toys that are for sale at Walmart, and they had a very large contract with Walmart and an intention of bringing production back to the U.S. And so they announced it. And they had been producing in China previously. And as soon as the Chinese manufacturer, it was a contract manufacturer, found out that they were leaving and shutting down, they had container loads of product that was coming to the US for the Christmas season, and they withheld those containers. So Redmond Industries had no product to sell to Walmart for the Christmas season. And ultimately they went bankrupt because of it. So, they really didn't take enough focus, they didn't make enough focused effort to determine how this was going to affect their operations. So those are a couple of the things that happen. As I mentioned, employment contracts is a big one. Getting permission to leave China is another one. What I think executives don't understand is China is not the Western world. And so the laws are different, the approach is different, the culture is different. It really is important to consider all of those aspects when you're making a total cost of ownership decision.
And so the Reshoring Institute, though, then I guess you work with them because you kind of know how the system works. You understand how in China business works and how the relationships kind of begin and end there with those American-based manufacturers who are looking to essentially leave.
That's right.
What about things that are as simple as being a company, and I'm interested in getting my equipment back. I'm interested in getting my tools back and things like that. How easy is that? I mean, is it just one of those things like, no, if you decide to leave, it's just as good as you're going to get. You're going to leave, you're going to pull out of the country, but you leave everything there. How does that all work?
Yeah, that's another very good point. So trying to get your tools and dies and molds out of China is next to impossible. So what happens when you send a tool or a die that is for making some kind of special part or product in China? Is the Chinese look at that as becoming part of their physical infrastructure of the manufacturing site. And once it's there, unless you have a contract that specifically says it's yours, if you just ship it there for use there, then they consider it's part of their plant, part of their facility, and they own it. So they're not likely to allow it to be shipped out of the plant or to have it come back. So tools and dies and molds are really difficult. And of course, the other side to that is if you leave that special manufacturing equipment behind, guess what? They can manufacture the same parts after you leave.
So, which brings up the question of intellectual property, patents, copyrights, and so forth. have been told, or we've learned over time, that just because you have a patent here in the United States, you're not necessarily protected if you go overseas to manufacture your goods. What happens in that case?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So China is coming up the curve in terms of IP, and they're starting to recognize global standards in that regard, and there are some lawsuits and so forth. So, over time, some of that will be more respected, I think. But for now, most of the manufacturers will say, you're taking your production out of our plant, if it's a contract manufacturer, for example. They have the tools and dies and know-how that you've left behind. And I would say most of the intellectual property is in the know-how to manufacture a specific product. If you leave that behind, you exit China, and they're left with all this know-how and equipment, and so of course they're going to produce the same product. And most of that you will find then is being sold in the third world. So they start entering other markets and competing with you on a global basis. You need to be aware of that and understand how that operation works, and be able to protect your IP as well as your capital investment.
Do you think it sometimes that knowing that, or because that is so difficult, that may actually stall or prevent a company from leaving China when they want to?
Yeah, and that circles back to what I said at the beginning, is that when we're looking at a global manufacturing strategy, there may be parts of your production you do want to leave in China. I mean, you may be producing product for sale in the local Chinese market. And, quite frankly, it's the largest growing market in the world, Asia is, so you may want to still continue to produce there, and that may be your strategy, that you leave part of it there, but then also peel off what part you want to bring back to the U.S. for manufacturing in the local market in the U.S. and California in particular, right? It's where we would like to see more development of manufacturing.
I think the point there being well taken is that there are options to you, and so even if maybe pulling out altogether is not an option, there may be something else that you can consider that might be workable. What about the application process? I mean, is there an application process to leaving China? Talk to you.
Yeah, so it's not as easy as closing down and saying we're out of here, and which we might do in the U.S. In China, if you have a manufacturing plant, a contract manufacturer, maybe partially owned by the Chinese government, maybe partially a state-owned enterprise, you have to apply to leave. You may have permits that you have to apply for and pay for. You probably have employment contracts. So in China, an employee is hired for a promise of a year or a promise of 2 years. And if you exit the plant, you have to pay out those contracts. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't companies that shut down and close the door and turn off the lights and leave in the middle of the night. But if that happens, and that's recorded, you may never be able to come back to China and manufacture there again, right? Or you may be stopped. I've seen people that got stopped at customs on their way out, right, and brought back because they had closed down in the middle of the night. So, that's a problem. So you want to do things that are appropriate and legal with respect to the Chinese government, and leave appropriately if that's what you decide to do, so that in 10 years, if you decide to come back and manufacture again in China, you can do that. So you're not shut out forever.
We were talking before we started the conversation here on camera that you are getting a lot of real positive feedback, and a lot of people are starting to approach the Reshoring Institute, people coming to you, those manufacturers with operations in China who are looking to bring back. There are also a number of companies, as I understand it, Rosemary, that are very interested in, while they may not have manufacturing facilities in China, they're interested in offering you their support in any way that they can. For those companies interested in offering support, for those companies interested in taking advantage of the services that you provide to help them bring their manufacturing back, what can they do?
Yeah, well, as we talked about before, the Reshoring Institute is a nonprofit organization, and we've established the Institute with a dual purpose. One is to provide free or very low-cost research to companies that are considering reshoring or onshoring. So that's one direction for the general public. And then the other part is we have 3 paid interns every semester. So we're really trying to build manufacturing awareness in the college students and graduate students, because they're going to become the executives of the next 10 or 20 years. So we have a dual purpose. If any manufacturer or interested party wants to take advantage of that, they can go to our website and download a lot of free information. Sometimes we have small projects that we can put an intern to work on for very, very low cost. I mean, nothing compared to what you would find in the consulting world. And the work is very high quality. So we oversee what happens there and make sure that the quality standards are met and that the research is robust and appropriate.
And you oversee that because you've been in this industry for such a long period of time and consulted with companies going back many years, and so you oversee that directly.
Yes, that's right.
The website is reshoringinstitute.org,
That's correct.
All right,
yes.
very, very good. Final question. So far, what are your observations about the companies that you've worked with and that you've heard are interested in bringing manufacturing back? Are we starting to see measurable results in these companies that are coming back?
Absolutely. And I think, it's phenomenal. And of course, I'm doing this every day. So I talk to people who are very positive about it and seeing what's going on. But, I would say most executives are aware of reshoring, talking about it, considering it, saying, gee, that's an interesting idea. Can we actually do it? Because I think everyone recognizes it's the right thing to do to rebuild the middle class in America. It's the right thing to do to strengthen our economy. And there is a lot of momentum because of that.
Well, Rosemary Coates, we appreciate you taking the time out.
Thank
It's
you.
nice to see you again, and much good luck and continued success at the Institute.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. That's it for this edition of Manufacturer's Corner. Thanks again to my guest, Rosemary Coates, Executive Director of the Reshoring Institute at the University of San Diego. If you're a manufacturer, policymaker, or educator and you'd like to join us on camera to discuss the manufacturing-related news and issues that are important to you, please complete the form on the contact page at manufacturerscorner.com. You can also give us a call if you're interested in supporting our program, interested in supporting what we do here at Manufacturer's Corner. We'd be interested in chatting with you about sponsorship opportunities. All you have to do is visit us once again at manufacturerscorner.com or call the number you see on your screen, 951-697-3098. That's 951-697-3098. Thanks for clicking over to Manufacturer's Corner. Again, my name is Jeff Allen. Good to see you. We'll talk to you again soon.
This program was brought to you by the following proud sponsors: Paulson Manufacturing, saving the eyes and lives of workers and first responders by manufacturing the highest quality and most reliable safety protective gear in the world. And by the Alltech Media Group, the region's leading multimedia video production and marketing company, creating powerful and innovative marketing strategies that deliver exponential returns.